Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. This is the show where between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic-specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis, and today's guest is someone I've found very interesting and have followed on social media for a long time now. Dr. Angela Stanton, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and congratulations to your new podcast. It's a very good thing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Dr. Stanton, could you give us just a brief background on yourself, who you are, where you've come from, what your areas of interest and niche is within the metabolic health space?
Sure. I'm actually a migraine specialist, and that's because I had migraine all my life. So all my metabolic, nutrition, and health in general knowledge comes from my research because of my migraines. In other words, my migraines saved me, basically, because had it not been for my migraines, I would never, ever have given a thought. And I'm not even sure I would ever have even gotten involved or be interested in nutrition per se. I would be just like the millions of others. So that's my connection. In terms of my background, I got a PhD late in life because I have children, and I'm originally from Europe. And so we immigrated to Canada, from Canada to United States. And so we've been here now over 50 years, but before that, it's quite a bit of moving around. And so there was no time to actually get my education. So it's a late degree. And so my interests are formed by my growing adult life rather than a childhood curiosity. So it's a little bit different from what other people do. And so my PhD is actually in neuroscience, in what is called neuroeconomics, which is basically two fields combined. It's economics and neuroscience combined. And so my focus in that one was focusing on a couple of very specific hormones, or neuropeptides to be more precise, oxytocin and vasopressin, and how they affect human decision making. So it was very detailed molecular structural kind of nature research with a lot of statistics and economics and games and everything. So it was very different from what I'm doing now, which at the time was fascinating to me, but I knew nothing about nutrition. And so as I was teaching, I ended up getting a lot of migraines, and the migraines themselves were so bad that I didn't feel good about teaching. I mean, I was always on some kind of medications, and I would sleep between classes to get my head a little bit better. And so I quit. I said, okay, I can't do this. I just quit. I mean, you try to teach a lecture hall of 300 students, and have a good mind to actually do it, right? It's really not easy. And so I quit, and I started to dig into migraine. And so I read what was available at that time. This is like 16, 17 years ago by now. Everything that there was, books or academic articles, talked to doctors, took all kinds of medications, tried to understand what was happening. And so slowly, it took me some time to understand the connection to soap, and then the connection from there to nutrition. And so today, here I am already 8 years completely migraine-free, and part of the metabolic movement. And I've got about 20,000 followers on Facebook in my group, a little bit less than that, but about. And all of them working toward being migraine-free, just like I did. So this is my connection.
Oh, that's fantastic. Just for the audience, because I'm mindful, not everyone has had the misfortune of experiencing migraines. I used to get a lot of migraines, and I don't think the general public, the people who don't get them, appreciate how debilitating they are. Can you talk us through what your migraines were like?
Sure. And before I tell you about what mine looked like, let me just define what migraine is, because a lot of people don't actually know, and they think of just getting a very big headache is equivalent to migraine. I'm sorry, I got to blow my nose.
No problem.
It's just coming out of a little bit of a cold or RSV coming out of Antarctica that I'm still recovering from. But so what migraine is, so it's not a headache. It actually doesn't even need to have a headache to go with it. So many people saying that they have a strong headache, then it's a migraine. But even if you have a headache, it doesn't need to be a strong headache. It just needs to be a very specific headache. So first of all, migraine is a genetic disease. So you can't have like you had one and then nothing more for like a century. It's just simply no such. You either have a migraine brain or you don't have a migraine brain. So it's a different brain.
This episode is brought to you thanks to my work as a Zinzino independent partner. To find out more about Zinzino's product offering within test-based personalized nutrition, or to find out about how to join as an independent partner yourself and build a revenue stream in helping others take the guesswork out of their personal health journeys, please stay tuned because I'll be sharing information later in this episode.
And so if you have migraine, chances are that you had some migraine-like symptoms that were misinterpreted when you were a child. Like when I was a child, I used to have a lot of irritable bowel syndrome, restless leg syndrome, cyclical vomiting syndrome. So you just vomit for no reason whatsoever. And they always thought it was some kind of a bug. Maybe the kid ate some fruit or vegetable, something with a bug. Turns out this is the child presentation of migraine. And I don't remember if I had headaches or not. I can't even talk about that. But I started getting these in my early teens, like 11 or so. And as an adult, the migraine can hit us or convert from this into a headache type migraine at any time in your life. So mine, sort of kind of what I call genetic expression to this change, happened when I was about 28. So after the birth of my first child. And since then, it's just been downhill, getting worse and worse and worse. So it is really, so by the time I was in my 50s, it was like every day, all the time. And so there was no escape from it. And so the symptoms are you will get dizzy, nauseous, vomiting, not at all headache, right? You can have vertigo where you can't even get up because everything is spinning. You can have aura. You can just have visual disturbances, which aren't technically auras, but I sort of kind of include them as auras, which are like you can see dots and sparks. You may have lines cut through and covered with white or other things. Or like sometimes I would have like going to the kitchen and sit, and suddenly everything is like I'm in a fog. And I said, wow, what is happening? And that fog is an aura. And of course, I also had real aura, like coming back from Antarctica. This is mentioned to you. When I went to Antarctica, from Antarctica coming back, went to Rio de Janeiro for a few days. And the flight was like all day long. We were going from plane to plane, and we had all kinds of horrific stories to go with that. And so we got to Rio, and we had a car waiting for us from the hotel that was going to leave in half an hour. And we had to make it to the car. We got there just before midnight. And the car was going to leave shortly after midnight because the time of work hour is over. And so we had to make it out of the airport going through customs, and the gate was over a mile from the exit. So we're talking about running at midnight through. So by the time I got to the car, I had a massive aura, the kind that you feel that you're in a disco because it's one vision is completely blacked out. And you see this beautiful, actually colorful. It was like a red balloon changing shapes, and it was gorgeous. But I knew it was an aura, so I just took so. But so the symptoms, and then if you have a headache, your headache has to be by requirement on one side only. So if you have a headache in the front or the back or the top or the whole head, or the headache is moving, it's not a migraine headache. It's only on one side. So a migraine is like a seizure. It's the same thing. Seizures, epileptic seizures, and migraines are identical in initiation, just express themselves differently based on the electrical current moving through the brain in a different way. But otherwise, they're completely the same thing. So it's really very few people realize that. So it's not a headache. It's literally an electrical activity in the brain that does something to you. And in the case of a migraine, if it's because it is an electrical activity and it's not a vascular thing, it is also not, it cannot possibly be beating with your heart because it's not a vascular pain. So it's not going to have any of the kind of movements that you think that, oh my God, I feel every heart
throbbing, things like that.
You're not going to have that. You're not going to have like something is around your head and is holding it really tight. You're not going to have any of that. It's going to be like somebody hit you with the hammer. It may not be a very big headache, but it's going to be a headache as if somebody hit you with a hammer and the hammer is still in there.
Okay.
And it's going to be in there for 3 days because most migraines last usually for 3 days.
Okay.
So it's not even that you have a migraine headache for a little bit, minimum 4 hours, and then up to 3 days is the migraine headache definition. So it's very different from just a standard headache. And the cause of migraine headache is this electrical problem that I explained to you. But this is caused by something, and this something is an electrical connection, which is basically salt. Because if you look at how the brain works and how electricity is generated by the brain, it is sodium rushing into the neuron through voltage gated sodium channels as potassium is coming out, and it generates an electricity, which is called action potential. So your brain is running on salt, right? And so on migraineurs, because they have a different brain, it's a different structure, a lot more sensory neuronal connections. So if you and I go into the same room, and if you're not a migraineur, and I am, and we go into the same room, and that room has a certain light setting and a certain sound, a certain smell, I, as a migraineur, may get a migraine from the intensity of the light, and you may want it lighter because you can't even read yet. So we get in a lot more light than you do. We get in a lot more odor than you do, and we get in a lot more touch and taste and everything than other people do, because our brains have a lot more neuronal connection between the sensory neurons. So we are hypersensitized all the time. And then we have a problem of the inhibition with GABA, which is another story. But so when I'm looking at in total of how it is affecting my brain, this is what actually migraine is. And the headache is just a warning that, okay, so you are out of salt. Okay, so you need to replace it with salt. So if you get a prodrome, which would be a pre-sensation, like for some people, it could be an aura. Like at the airport, immediately, I sat down in the car as we got to the car and immediately reached for my salt. Salt went in with water, and that was that. And problem was salt went in. I could count till 7, and my aura was gone.
Okay.
So it's just,
when you say salt, is it literally just like table salt, or what specific salt do you use?
No, salt is salt. Salt is sodium chloride. Actually, I am very much against fancy salts because especially the solutions like LMNT and some other kind of
the electrolyte solution,
electrolyte solutions, because they aren't electrolyte. Electrolyte is really just one electrolyte mineral, or actually metal, I should say, be it salt, be it potassium, be it magnesium or calcium. These are your electrolyte minerals or metals. And what a true electrolyte is just one of these with water that then generates an electrical connection such that you can run electricity through the water. So that's the definition of electrolyte. And so when you add substances like sweeteners, be it artificial or natural, it doesn't matter. It breaks up the electrolyte. It's no longer an electrolyte. Now it's a food. It will head to a completely different place.
Interesting. Yeah,
and so it's not even good, right? And so if you get salt that is very fancy and it has, say, a little bit of iron, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, trace minerals, it's no longer an electrolyte. Number one. Number two, do you want that? If you look back at what salt is, it's created by volcanoes. I think most people don't know that salt is created by volcanoes.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
And there you go. So, and it's released, and so every single rock or sand is full of salt. And it basically gets to the water through rain that washes the water or the rivers, and it's collecting it. And basically the waters are washing the salt out of the rocks. And that's how you're getting salt water. So there is no water on planet Earth that is not salted to some degree. So
that is
every water.
Yeah.
Only the purest of water that's, frozen,
glacial
for the Arctic that fell as snow, that would be pure of salt. But the moment it runs into the first rock it touches, it has salt in it. So it's just like,
cool.
Okay, so but when you get to the ocean where all water goes, what else is living in the ocean? You've got all the fish and you've got all the other creatures who poop, pee, die.
Yeah.
And so that's where your trace minerals come from. Right. Do you want to eat that? I don't know about you, but I don't particularly care to eat that fish.
I grew up on the coast. I grew up surfing and life saving and stuff like that. So being in the ocean was part of life. And
but would you want to eat that salt which has these dead organic matters on it constantly?
Um, to be
That's a
honest,
different
I've
question.
never thought about it that way, but I have used a lot of sort of sea salt in my life, and it's delicious. I'm going to plead ignorance.
Well, you can. It's your choice, But so
Yeah.
if I'm looking at it, it's totally up to you what you eat. And like Himalayan and Celtic and all these other salts,
Mm-hmm.
they all have these trace minerals. Himalayan has even worse trace minerals because it actually has heavy metals from the tectonic activity of the mountain as it was lifting. So I would not ever go near Himalayan salt.
That's very interesting because a lot of people
Right.
tout Himalayan pink salt
Yes.
or pink rock
It's
salt or
very
whatever it is as the best of
It's
the
very
best.
bad now. Well, it may taste the best, but you're collecting a ton of mercury. I mean, we go through taking all our teeth, the fillings out of our teeth because there's mercury in them, and here we are eating
Yeah,
salt with mercury. So it
interesting.
makes no sense at all.
Yeah, no,
That's anyway.
that's
So
very
the
interesting.
cheapest of table salt that is nothing, just salt. So I use a cheap Morton table salt, which is pure. It has nothing added. It's purified by
Just
heat. It wash
just
it and
pure
purify
sodium
it.
chloride.
Pure sodium chloride. That's all you need.
Okay. Out of curiosity, let's take a you mentioned LMNT and electrolyte powders like that. What about one that is just purely magnesium, sodium, and potassium, with no sweeteners, with no fillers? Is that something that people could still use for electrolyte
I don't,
purposes?
yeah,
Or
I understand. It is better than if it contains sweeteners because it still remains an electrolyte solution. But there are some elements that in there that I don't recommend. I have an article on one of the blogs um, about potassium supplementation.
Mhm.
So this takes a little bit of thinking. It's kind of complicated. But if you look
Okay.
at your blood test, okay, so think back a blood test when you go and you get your electrolyte panel. And your electrolyte panel is going to have the sodium, potassium, chloride, and calcium, all these other kind of things, right? And so take a look at the amount of sodium and look at the amount of potassium. They both are equivalently measured in milliequivalent per liter. And in your
Okay.
blood, you have about 40 times as much sodium as potassium. Now take a look at a product, and I don't want to single out element, but any other product that
Mm-hmm.
contains more than just salt. What's the ratio of potassium to sodium in that product? You're
Okay.
going to find exactly the opposite. You're going to find there's going to be more potassium.
More
Many of them
potassium
have
than sodium.
200 to 400 milligram potassium to maybe 100 to 200 milligram sodium. That's exactly the wrong direction to go. Now, let me ask you one more question. In the United States, we have we put prisoners oftentimes to death on the ones on death row, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think they use in those states that use injections
Is
for
it
the
potassium
execution?
chloride?
Potassium. Now, I don't know if it's chloride or not, but it's
Yeah.
potassium. So it causes a fatal heart arrhythmia. That is
Okay.
how it ends life. Okay. So if you take potassium and if it is too much, you end up causing harm to yourself. And
Interesting.
so
Okay. So
you also don't need it because if you look back at what are you evaporating when you're exercising, for example, or there's heat outside, you're evaporating stuff in your blood. There's almost no potassium in your blood. It's like five to six. It's like 4 to 5.5 milli equivalent. It's nothing. Sodium is like 135 to 154 milli
okay.
equivalent. It's like a huge difference. So what you're going to evaporate mostly is going to be salt, not potassium.
That's
So you
very
just need to
interesting.
replenish salt, nothing else. And one more thing that most people don't understand are kidneys. So when you drink or eat, not eat, but drink potassium or salt, it goes into your blood and your blood has to reset the electrolyte balance, the osmolality of your blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how do the kidneys work with sodium pumps, first of all? So the kidneys
Mm-hmm.
will require sodium themselves to work. Plus the kidneys work through what is like a mash. So you think about a tube that has
Yeah.
like think of it like a straw with different holes on them,
Okay.
right? So the holes are like molecular size or atomic
Yeah.
size, tiny molecules. And so the size of the holes under natural conditions is the size of a sodium molecule. Okay. So when you're drinking water and your kidneys have to balance your blood osmolality, the water and sodium will automatically leave. That's just by nature. Okay.
Yeah.
If the kidneys have to recycle the sodium, they have to cause a vasoconstriction. So your whole blood vessel, everybody in your blood will constrict in order to allow kidney, this tube, to constrict as well to make the hole smaller so the sodium can't pass through either, only water can. So this is a recycle mechanism. Now, potassium is significantly bigger molecule than sodium. And so under standard normal conditions, no way a potassium can leave the kidneys or your blood. It's going to be recycled. So potassium is always recycled. That's the natural method of our kidneys.
Very interesting.
Unless you have a vasodilation, in which case you will reduce the amount of potassium also from your blood via the kidneys. But that's not common. So you usually recycle your potassium all the time. So you're not losing it with your blood by evaporation. You're not losing it by your kidneys. You lose your potassium by fecal matter from your food that you're eating. But when you're drinking it, you're not losing it. And that's going to cause you a lot of trouble. So if you read that article that I wrote, where I interview actually an emergency doctor, a cardiologist, a surgeon actually, and he explains what tremendous amount of work they have to go through to get rid of excess potassium from people when they come in, type 2 diabetics. So we're connecting to metabolic disease here. Type 2 diabetics often end up hyperkalemic, way too much potassium in their blood, and it can cause very serious trouble. And they end up in the emergency, and they have to go through tremendous amount of medications and work to get that potassium out of the blood. So the last thing you want to do is ever supply potassium through the blood that is greater than 50 milligram. You really don't want anything bigger than 50 milligram. You're safe to about 50 milligram.
Okay. And when we say 50 milligram, we're saying 50 milligram per day?
No, for example, I'm taking salt. I can't eat salt because it's an emetic and I'm vomiting from it right away. I'm very good subject on that. So I design my own salt. And this one has, instead of fillers, you know how they always put fillers in the capsule? I use 20 milligram potassium as a filler because 20 milligram potassium is still better than some other junk in there. And that's not harmful. And I take 2 capsules at once for each water that I drink as a migrainer. So that's me. That's not a general use. But with that, I'm still 40 milligram only, and I'm fine. I don't get any problems. It's under 50. So per cup.
That's fascinating. And then what about magnesium? Because you often hear when people talk about electrolytes, the common conception is it's magnesium, potassium, sodium together, and you need all 3.
You need all 3, but not together. So, for example, magnesium is a fantastic product, and many people who are not migraineurs, and I have to separate this here, often take it at night to help them sleep, because what magnesium does in the brain, very specifically, it opens and closes, it opens the gate, it attaches the ATP to the voltage gated channels. And so it allows the voltage gated sodium to go in and out, the voltage gated potassium to go in and out. So it sort of kind of oils the doors, so to speak. So it's for some people, it is great to take it at night. But for example, for a migrainer, I take it at night. I'm going to be up all night because my
keep you awake.
It's just going to be keeping me awake, and it's going to be giving me a wonderful REM sleep, that nightmares and other kind of stuff. So it depends on who you are. So like some people, even who are not migraineurs, can't take it at night because it's too much of a stimulant. So I consider my magnesium almost like a stimulant, but that's just, for some people it acts that way. And for other people, it doesn't. So it depends who you are, but it is very important. It participates in a lot of functions. And so you definitely benefit from it. And I recommend to all people to supplement it, whether you eat animal-based or plant-based, it doesn't matter. You could benefit from it in any case because it's may not be metabolically so available from the food, even if it's there, particularly if you're not eating carnivore. It's just a problem.
Yeah, brilliant. The one thing I've come across quite often is you obviously get different versions of magnesium, and most products have magnesium oxide, which from what I've read and from what I understand is complete garbage and to be avoided.
It is. Yeah. Yes, it is. Because so think about what oxide is. Oxide means it's already oxidized.
Yeah. So
you don't want anything that is oxidized. Now, the magnesium in all these products is always magnesium. So magnesium is actually a metal, but it is highly reactive. So it always immediately attaches to something. And so you can't really see magnesium on its own. I mean, you can, but you can't really touch it because it's immediately going to stick to you. It's going to start creating chemical bonds with everything, electrical and chemical bonds. So that's why you see that magnesium, which is a very soft, it's almost like a butter-like metal. So you don't actually see it on its own. You can't take it. You would die from it if you took it. It would disrupt your system immediately, take all the molecules away from your tongue and whatever else. So you couldn't possibly do that. And so what you're looking for in a magnesium is exactly what it is connected to and what those things that is connected to will be doing in your body. And so oxide is already useless because it's already spent. So is the oxide part going to go into any molecules or any cells that the oxide could open the gate to and get it into that particular cell? It won't, because it's not a nutrient that we're using. But if you're getting, for example, magnesium glycinate, that's glycine. That is an active amino acid, which has an open door to all of our cells, right? So, and it can also bring it into the production of many different things. If you're getting it to taurinate, again, another amino acid with a low formulation. So you've got to find the one. Citrate is good because we naturally create citrate, right? So that is also a good thing. So I created a magnesium. I created only those supplements so far that I wanted to have for myself. And these are actually not my company, but my son ordered the first batch for me, and you have to, of course, order a huge truckload when you order it. He said, I don't care, I'll pay for it, and I just store it for years. Magnesium doesn't rot, salt doesn't rot, so I don't care, it's fine.
That's actually, sorry, that's a very funny thing you say, because if you go and buy some salt, especially your fancy Himalayan pink rock salt that is from however many thousands of years ago in the Himalayas, and it expires next year, it's like, oh.
It's totally stupid. I mean, I know, but I guess they have to go by regulations. I mean, if they have to have a expiration date on a food, you have to have it on all foods, right? So it kind of makes sense. So, but I suppose in the case of in a pill or a capsule that I have, it would be the veggie cap, which may or may not have an expiration date. I don't consider it to be significantly important to pay attention to it. So I just have, I wanted to have a supply for me, and my son decided to buy it for me initially for Christmas, which was a super, or birthday, one of the two. So it was just a super gift at the time, but he was going to store it for me. And that was just so much. I mean, we're talking about pallets, several pallets that he had to order at once. And he said, well, can I sell it to migraineurs? So this is how it started, the company, which is Health by Principle. I think you can read that, maybe backwards, I don't know. This is how it started. And so now, but I still just buy or order the products. I design the products that I take. I don't design products that I don't want to take or that I don't think is important for some sort of a condition. And so I design magnesium, and the magnesium that I design has a citrate, glycinate, taurinate, and malate. So these are the 4 carriers. And so each has a specific purpose of what they do. And I find it extremely good. I also design a TTFD. Don't make me spell that out, B1, which is a thiamine that is a fat-soluble form of thiamine. But mine, I included a tiny bit of B9 and a tiny bit of vitamin C because these two help the vitamin absorption, the B1 absorption. And I have a D3 designed, which is with a gelatin, fish gelatin caplet. So the caplet itself is a fish gelatin. So it's beneficial, and it's in coconut oil. And it has all the goodies in it. So I am now thinking about designing a K2. So it's going to be my next one, I think.
Nice.
To design one. And so I look for, I have a lot of chemical experience. I'm not a pharmacist or a chemist by any means, but I go through tremendous amount of knowledge, seeking before I
you're a scientist, so I think you have all the credentials and the toolkit to go and do that sort of research.
I go for the toolkit because I know where to look for the information more than having a PhD is not very helpful if you don't know where to look for the stuff. So you need to need to understand where to look for and what to look for. And so yes,
that's fascinating.
So the magnesium is good. It's very good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you for that. You mentioned that you've got a Facebook group going and you've been helping people with their migraine struggles for some time. Can we talk a little bit about that? How long have you been running that group, and what sort of results are you seeing?
Sure. I started the group over 10 years ago. Actually, we just had a
Wow.
10-year anniversary. And the group over time probably had over 30,000 people in it, or maybe even 40,000. I don't know, because when people come in, they're in a really bad shape. Many don't have jobs, or they
Mhm.
just decide to choose to stay at home. And many are disability. And then as they recover, and they all recover, and we've never had a person who didn't become migraine free. It takes different lengths of time for each person.
Mhm.
But then after that, they go back to work and they often leave.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
had some famous people who nobody knew, but I knew they were using some identity that's just, different.
Mm.
And so people don't know who's in the group, but we had some directors, movie directors, we had some actresses and
Okay.
actors, some scientists, and some other famous people in there. And so
Nice.
it's wonderful. And we have a lot of doctors and general healthcare providers like nurses and other, but a lot of medical doctors are in the group. I would say about 100 medical doctors and about maybe 300 other healthcare professionals
That's very
in the
encouraging.
group. It's very encouraging. Many of them come in for their own migraine,
Mm.
but many of them also come in and they bring their patients with them. So actually, this
Nice.
happened just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. That I mentioned this, and a doctor said, "Well, I am one of these doctors," and I said, "Well, also, and do you send your patients to us?" And then one of the patients said, "Well, I'm one of her patients," and so we have, and so this is a very large group. It's just under 20,000. I don't know if it's 18.4
Mm.
or 19.4. It's something like that.
Okay.
And then I also, and this is not ketogenic, so I have
Mm.
several groups. And this one is using low carb, high fat, and carnivore, which I suppose we're going to talk about. And then I have another group which is ketogenic for migraineurs. I also have three other groups. One of
Right.
them is for people who are fluxed. I don't know if you're familiar with
No,
people.
no. Could you explain
Okay,
that,
so
please?
people who get medication, antibiotics such as Cipro or not Caflexis, let me just stick with Cipro because I forget
Hmm.
the names of the other ones. But the generic name has a Floxa, Floxa in the middle.
Okay.
Like Cipro would be ciprofloxacin. And so
Hmm.
medications that have this Floxa term in there, they cause a lot of nerve damage and
Okay.
mitochondrial damage. And so I have a group for that. It's very small. And then I have a group for fibromyalgia, which is,
Yeah.
I am almost positive it's really just another manifestation of a migraine or seizure kind behavior. And so
Okay.
they seem to respond to the migraine protocol completely. And then the last group, my fifth group, is clueless doctors. And so that goes with my webpage, which is cluelessdoctors.com,
Mm.
where I am basically an activist in
Yes.
anti-establishment in terms of medical treatments and food, nutrition, that kind of stuff.
Yes. No, that's brilliant. You're a busy, busy person, aren't you?
Yes, I am, but I like that.
No, that's fantastic. You said something very casually, or almost nonchalantly, but it strikes me as something worth revisiting because I don't think people appreciate how profound it is. And what you said was that everyone who's gone through your migraine group and gone through the migraine protocol has seen improvement. And it may take differing amount of times depending on the individual and where they're starting from, but you're seeing 100% success rate in getting
Right,
people to treat their migraines. That's
right.
huge.
It is huge. It's absolutely huge. What makes it very difficult is that we have a lot of people coming in and they're all diagnosed with migraine, right? And I have to sort of kind of re-diagnose. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, which I consider
Mm.
to be a great advantage at this point,
Yes.
actually. And so I don't diagnose, but I define migraine in a certain way,
Hmm.
which I by now have enough experience to know what actually is a real migraine and what is not.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I diagnose many times, I would say about 20% of the time, the people believing that they have migraine, they don't have migraine. They may
That's
have
one in five.
headaches. It's very high. So they may have cluster headaches. They may
Hmm.
have intracranial hypertension. They may have stroke. I mean,
Hmm.
we have caught people who, when I told them, you have to go to the emergency, this is what you have is an emergency. And they went to the emergency, they said they had 7 hours to live.
Wow.
And the life was saved because it was actually a kind of a stroke, not a, it was a very modified stroke that was caused
Mm.
by atherosclerotic damage. And it was just like a stroke in waiting, and
Yeah.
it sent out
Interesting.
signals, and it would have become a wet stroke, which spills blood all over the
Mm.
brain in 7 hours. So it's important to discover if a person doesn't have a migraine, but they have some other kind of headache, because then we can tell them, hey, you really should go visit this kind of doctor, that kind of a test that you have to do, because I think that you may have something else going on. And
Mm.
so this is quite disturbing to a lot of people, because
Yeah.
they're told by, I don't know, 3, 4, and Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic and the best neurologists in the world and God knows what. And Angela Stanton, tell me that it's not a migraine. I'm sorry, it's not a migraine. And it's sometimes, and then these people who, and of course, we don't chase them out of the group. They're welcome to stay, but they
Mm.
have to understand whether what they have is not a migraine. And this protocol is for migraine. It may
Yeah.
or may not work for them. And so we find that many of these people leave and they don't want to. And then they become the ones who say, well, migraine, it doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. But no,
Yeah.
they don't have migraine. And then we have many people who decide to stay anyway. And then they work with me and we adapt the protocol a little bit differently around them
Hmm.
to see them, like they will take less salt than, for example, I do.
Mm.
And so some changes, and most of them recover really good. Like cluster headache, it's not 100% success, but
Mm.
it's significantly reduced. The pain is much smaller, shorter lasting, and much seldom. So
Okay.
there is a benefit.
Yeah.
Even then, fibromyalgia is completely reversed by the protocol, for example. So we have many kind of things that totally respond to it. For migraine, it's 100%, and for other things, it's questionable of what it is. And the
That's
length of
awesome.
time, we had people who started taking salt, and they said, wow, that's all I needed. And they needed to make no other diet change. The salt did
Wow.
everything, and they're migraine free, and that's totally fine.
That,
The goal,
that
you know,
do you think, because like with animal fats and meat and dairy and everything, salt has been demonized in the mainstream for a long time now because it raises blood pressure and it's going to
right.
give you a heart attack and blah 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 blah. How much of that do you think drives like the migraine problem that you're seeing and helping people with?
100%.
Yeah, it's a case of people are avoiding salt because they've been
Totally avoiding
indoctrinated
salt.
to avoid
These are
it.
the people who are really following the guidelines.
Mm.
And they're avoiding the fat, they're avoiding the meat, they're eating vegetables, so vegetarians or vegans. They're trying everything. They reduce the salt. They're really following the dietary guidelines. And oftentimes the salt on its own is not enough. But a
Mm.
single episode of migraine can be averted by a migraine, by salt for
Right.
most
Okay.
people. And so the response to salt on its own is 100%. It's really absolutely amazing. There is a caveat of there are in some instances, such as, for example, when the barometric pressure is increasing,
Mm.
taking salt is counterproductive. So that at that time, taking salt can actually make things worse. But at that time, drinking coffee can make it also worse, or taking a triptan, which is the most common medication, will also make it worse, because the triptan in coffee vasoconstrict, and the salt will fill the blood, or the blood vessels tighter, so it will have the same effect. It's going to give it a little bit of a constricting effect as a result of that. And so this is not going to be a good one, because under pressure, you actually should reduce the blood volume, basically. So it
Okay.
works against you. But in all other cases, excuse me, all other cases, salt is really, that's how I discovered it. I tried
Mm.
everything. You don't want to know some of the things that I've tried. And then one day I said, well, let me try salt, because all my books, I was reading all the physiology, and they were all explaining to me the importance of electrolyte. I said, well, damn it, it's salt. I need to try
Mm.
salt. But everything was against salt. And so I too was concerned, well, I'm going to die from taking just a pinch of salt. What's
Yeah.
going to happen? Am I going to pass out? So and one day I just decided, okay, let me just try the salt. And I tried, and it took my headache away. So the headache part of the migraine went away. And so the migraine went away, at least to some level or to some length of time. I mean, it was not a cure at the time, but absolutely the salt is the biggest problem, is that we are restricted in how much salt. I mean, if somebody knows, just the other day, my husband was telling me, he said, why do you have bottles? I have two kinds of bottles. This one has an N on it, which means no iodine, right? But it's a salt, and I just put an N on it. But I have another bottle that has an I on it, which is for iodine. And he said, so why are you taking two kinds of salt? I said, well, do you realize how many salt capsules I take a day? I would overdose in iodine if I took. And so I'm taking 22 capsules of salt. That's not with food. That's just with water.
Just on its own, yeah.
That's just my minimum of water is 11 cups. And I take 2 capsules with each cup minimum. I can take more, but I just take 2 with every cup. So that's 22. And a single salt capsule has 360 milligrams sodium. So that's 900 milligrams salt. So 22 times 900, just so that we can calculate that really quickly. 22 times 900. Let me read. So I'm taking 19,800 milligrams salt. Just with my waters. That's just me with my waters a day.
And you haven't died of a heart attack yet?
Not only haven't I died, but my blood pressure is completely low. I mean, I go to the doctor and my blood pressure is over 110 over 70. I said, what? What happened? I'm normally at around 100 over 60. And I have white coat and it goes up to 110 over 70. They always laugh at me. The last time I went, I ran up the stairs and I just barely sat down when they called me in. It was 121 over 82. And I said, wow. It is really that. But I was after running up the stairs. I mean, doubling up, running up because I was. And so, it didn't increase my blood pressure. I actually wish it did sometimes, because when I go on a treadmill, sometimes my blood pressure could be once it was like 80 over something. And my husband said, you need to drink salt and water. I said, well, I have been drinking salt and water. It just doesn't do that. And so it doesn't really increase it. It just increases blood volume. But as you mentioned, it's wrongfully demonized, because what is increasing blood pressure is the sugar. Because the sugar in the blood, and I don't want to get too technical, but there's an endothelial layer on which there is what's called a glycocalyx, which is, if you ever had a fish in your hand and it slipped out of your hand, that was the glycocalyx like coating on the fish, which
so
makes sure that the fish,
slimy feeling.
It's a mucousy stuff, and it makes sure that the fish moves in one direction easily, and it makes it really difficult for it to swim backwards. So in our blood vessels, we have the same thing. Makes the blood flow in one direction, so it can't flow in backwards. Basically, that's and so that's a glycocalyx, and that's destroyed by sugar. And when that is destroyed, it regrows 8 to 12 hours. But then by then you had another meal, and you destroyed it again.
When we say sugar there, what we're really meaning is carbohydrate.
Carbohydrates, any kind of glucose. So whatever you eat doesn't go in as food into your blood. So as the sugar equivalent of it goes into your blood as blood glucose, be it a potato, be it a corn chip, be it sugar, or be it whatever else you eat or drink. It's going to, even a little part of protein, if you eat too much or too little for synthesis to start, will end up as blood glucose in your blood. And if this blood glucose exceeds a certain threshold level, then the glycocalyx is going to be damaged. And it's just like if you brush against a door frame or something, you're going to get some little bruise. That is what's going to happen inside your blood vessel. That is the damage. That's the vascular inflammation. And so once you have the vascular inflammation, and your skin is trying to heal, right? You get scabs on it and everything. Well, that's what you get inside your blood vessels. And so it's going to restrict the flexibility. And so it won't be able to dilate or constrict. And so that's then the vascular damage. And so if you have then an increase in blood volume, which is going to happen from taking salt and water, and your vascular system can't dilate, then you're going to increase your pressure. So that's where it's coming from.
Okay. So I think the takeaway message there is, it's not an either or scenario between carbohydrates and salt. It's the case that excess carbohydrate is toxic in the blood.
Right.
And then there's a compounding effect where you have carbohydrates in excess in the blood causing vascular damage, but
Exactly.
then you're increasing blood volume through the intake of salt and compounding the issue. And that's what people have latched onto and said, no, salt's bad for you.
Exactly, because that's the easiest thing, and that's the one that they get the symptoms with. So you're not getting the symptom of having a hypertension unless you increase your blood pressure, blood volume, right? So they always blame the last thing
Yeah.
because that's what brings up the symptom, but that's not necessarily the cause.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And then it's the case, like with yourself, where you're not consuming high amounts of carbohydrates, so you're not experiencing that vascular damage, but you are consuming what seems like superhuman quantities of salt and not
Yes.
having the associated hypertension.
No, I don't have hypertension, and don't. I wish I would increase my blood pressure a little bit time to time because it could help me in certain things. But um, of course, migraineurs genetically have a lower blood pressure, so that's another factor in it. But my husband, also who's not a migraineur, he's on salt and water. He takes less salt than I do, but he takes about half as much as I do.
Okay.
So he's taking a lot, and he doesn't have hypertension. And the one thing that is very important here to mention is the kidneys, because if you recall, I said earlier that the kidneys actually have sodium pumps.
Yes.
So they use sodium themselves. So if you're reducing your sodium, on one hand, you're forcing the kidneys to recycle sodium all the time. And on the second hand, you're restricting its pump to be able to recycle all the time because it's not able to work so well without the salt. So you're literally causing kidney damage. And by now we have many studies out there that show that recycling sodium causes kidney damage on the long run. And if you look at, I don't know about in the UK or anywhere else in the world, but in the US, if I'm looking at blood tests, and I have some people coming in from other countries, and I look at a lot of blood tests in my migraine group, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like a daily event where they just throw in the full blood test, and I look at see if they need a vitamin or something like that. And I'm comparing the kidney test, the EGFR, which is the estimated glomerular filtration rate, which is how well the kidneys filter your blood through, how fast, and how well. So how much of the toxin or byproducts they remove are horrible in Americans, and our laboratory range is set to be greater than 60, and in Europe it is greater than 90. I don't know. I think in the UK it is greater than 90 as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It is ridiculous. In the US they set it at the lower level because 80% of the population has that low, and that's actually
that's an interesting point. I think it's true, and perhaps you can weigh in on this, but the biggest problem, in my opinion, with the blood tests is the blood tests that I get here in the UK will not give me optimal ranges of specific essential nutrients. It will give me average.
Wow.
And what they don't tell you, but you sort of find out when you ask further questions or do some further reading, is the average is not the average of what should be good. It's the average of the last 2,000 patients that have been tested. So if societally the amounts of, let's take testosterone in men, for example, it's well documented at this stage that compared to our great-grandfathers, male testosterone levels have plummeted over the last several decades. So the average now is far lower than what the average would have been 2-3 generations back. And they don't tell you that. That information is not forthcoming. You sort of, if you land within the average, you assume yourself to be okay, but you're not. You're still extremely low. You may even still be deficient, but you're certainly not optimal.
Right. And in the US, you don't get the average. You get a lower and a high, usually. For some things, you just get that you need to be higher than or just lower than, depending upon what it is. But I don't think it is any better because in the US, it's actually based on not necessarily the last 2,000 people. It may just be 200 people.
Wow.
So it's not even, and each lab is different. So it's another problem too, that it's not standardized. And so different persons will have different labs, and I always have to ask for the lab ranges because they're incomprehensibly different. And so I've seen B12 in Germany, for example, B12 tests where range was, I think it was less than 5, between like 1 and 5 or something. And in the US, we have tests that go from 200 to 1200, or goes from 10 to 50, or what. I mean, it's impossible to tell where you send it. And the methods differ as well of how they creating the test itself, the analysis of the blood itself. So I understand that there should be differences between labs based on that. But so they should be coming with an actual guide. Now, my biggest problem with all of the world, especially with the UK, is that you guys are not told to have your blood tests fasted.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, because I may have a donut for lunch. You may have a steak for lunch. Joe Schmo may have nothing for lunch, and somebody else may just have a Coke for lunch. So how could it possibly be all these 4 give you an exactly identically measured test outcome? And it can't. And so the only lab ranges that we have, as bad as they are, at least there are some kind of ranges, but they're given based on fasted tests.
Yeah.
And so if then you go to the doctor and they're going to draw blood right there and then in the office or somewhere in the building at that time, and you weren't fasted, well, what's the point of doing that? And I find that many people in the UK aren't told that the tests have to be fasted.
Yeah.
And in the US too, many people, in fact, sometimes the doctors tell them that, no, you don't need fasted, just go get your cholesterol test. But then, because they're going to end up with high cholesterol as a result of the food, which often contains cholesterol, right? And it's going to end up in there, which is meaningless. It's not the kind of cholesterol we're looking for anyway. Then they're going to say, oh, but now you have to take statins. And so I'm almost like, okay, doctors, you're telling your patients to go to the test, not fasted, so you can prescribe statins.
I mean, it's job creation.
It looks like, right? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
I think the other complication with testing, and I have an appreciation for this because of the work that I do in mobile telecoms, and it's a weird association to make, but it'll make a bit of sense once I explain it through. With testing on mobile signal and quality of mobile signal and the end user experience, there's so much noise and so much fluctuation for differing reasons, times of day, weather patterns, lots of different things can interfere, that to get any accurate idea of what's actually going on in a network, you have to have a very large data sample to be able to weed out the noise and actually track trends. Bloods are quite similar in that regard, because it could be time of day, it could be a stressful event, it could be the meal you've had, it could be the coffee you drank. There's loads of different things that can impact hormone levels and the levels of different blood markers. And people don't appreciate that, but they'll go for a single blood test, which is just a single spotlight on a single point in time. But then want to draw conclusions about what's going on in their health. And I find that I think it would be better if the medical system promoted a battery of tests over a period of time to then use it to diagnose instead of just 1 or 2.
I totally agree. And I also think that gender has a lot to do with that, and age. So for example, I often get, like say calcium, serum calcium in your electrolyte panel. They have a range. And whether you're 5 years old or you're 60 years old or 110 years old, whether you're male or female, that's the range. And I think that's wrong. And so I go by judging the age of the person and whether it's male or female, birth female or birth male, not what they become later. And I'm looking to see what how they should be based on that. And that's just by my own estimation, because there are no guidelines for that. And so I think that that's another problem as well. So you're totally correct. It's a numbers game, and they should. And in the US, mind you, there is now, I just tested it. I'm going tomorrow for a huge blood test. It is by Dr. Mark Hyman, who's a functional doctor, and he made available a blood test package. It's an annual fee, so you pay an annual $499, so you get $500 a year. And for that, you get first annual test, then a second test 6 months later, and somewhere in between a 3 months test. Okay, and the test is huge. I have to go 2 separate times because it's too big to take it in one
sitting. Huh?
Right. So they
That's a fair bit
actually,
of blood.
the company that they work with restricts how many tubes they can draw at a time, and it's going to be something like 20 tubes or more.
Wow.
And
Okay.
they said that may be 20 tubes per sitting, and so I have to go twice. So I have it tomorrow, and then I have it next week. It has to be done within 10
Okay.
days, but you have to heal from the first,
Yeah. Well, you have to replenish
poke,
that.
right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's and that is really awesome, and it includes all the metabolic markers, the insulin, the C-peptide. I mean, you name it, it's in there. It is fantastic. So I bought it right away. I said,
That is
okay,
good. Yeah.
it's cheaper than. I mean, I have free blood tests through my provider, but this always I have to fight for everything. I said,
Yeah.
I'll just,
I try
yeah,
to get blood tests done here. When I went carnivore in June of 2022, I went to my GP and I explained that I was changing something in my diet and I just wanted a baseline to understand what was going on. And she was cooperative at the time because she didn't pry too much on what the dietary changes were. I just said I was going to eat healthier. And then 6 months later, I wanted a follow-up test. And this time I told her that I was eating carnivore.
that was
And
a
she
problem.
refused me the test. She refused.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you're not eating according to the dietary guidelines. I'm not spending NHS money on your tests. Like,
Right. That's
yeah,
you should
no,
not say that. Yeah. See, we don't have NHS here, and I have my own
yeah,
insurance, but it covers it fully, so I don't have to pay for it. But even in this one, the doctor still has to prescribe it for you. And I have a
mm,
very good doctor. He's been my doctor for 30 years at the same healthcare
yeah,
system, and he's a good friend by now. And he will order whatever he can, but some of the things are just simply not available unless I'm
yeah,
in a hospital, right? So it's just not an option. And
yeah.
so, and it's also, I don't want him to be bad. Like I wanted to get a continuous glucose monitor,
Mhm.
and he said, uh, I I asked him if he could prescribe one, and he said he can't. I have to be diabetic to
Yeah,
actually
it's weird.
prescribe it. I said, well, oh well, that's a problem. He said, but I can give you a prescription as long as you aren't coming into the medical system to get it. Go to another pharmacy, and you can get it there. It won't be covered. You won't get insurance benefits with it, but at least you can get it. I said, okay, that's fine. Just get me,
Yeah.
a 3 months worth of one of the brands. And then when I went to see him next time, I had a physical or something or other, and he said, "Did you go to outside? Because I got a memo that I shouldn't have done that." I said, "No, I went outside to a completely different pharmacy." And I said, I didn't give them my insurance card, nothing. They knew nothing about me.
Hmm.
And he said, "Yeah, I still got a warning against prescribing something." I
Uh,
said, "I'm sorry."
that's
So,
that boggles the mind if you think about that. I mean, CGM is such a powerful tool for
yeah.
preventative health.
Oh, well, that's a
The
problem. You just said the word
yeah,
preventative
there's
health.
no money to be made in that, is there? Yeah. So
If you
it's
kill yourself, what are you doing to the
mad.
healthcare industry? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, exactly. It's madness that we have a medical system which is so reactionary and built to profit off of reactionary
Oh,
medicine
absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
preventative medicine is treated like the enemy.
This
It's
is. I mean, they're going to be out of jobs. Can you imagine the number of people who suddenly will turn healthy if they're given the right information and the right support? 80% of the medical industry is not needed.
collapses. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's the mission, though. That
that is our
we're
mission.
fighting.
That's your and my mission. That's
Yeah,
our mission.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. So we've touched in places on the carnivore diet and animal based and so on and so forth. What does your diet look like on an average day? What is your eating?
It's actually very mood dependent. Some of my
Okay.
meals are completely carnivore. Some of my meals are nearly vegan because I eat a lot of food. I don't eat vegetables, but lately I've been experimenting with a few
Hmm.
because I'm going through a period. I guess when you're 71 years old, you just have a change in your life set, or something. And I said, I've had to reevaluate my values, and I will eventually go back into a much more carnivore-ish than what I'm doing now, because I added a couple of, like, I will eat some corn. I have gone through some corn cravings that I was unable to take out of my system. I don't eat sugar, seed oils, anything like that. But when I went to Antarctica, and that was in actually December last year,
Yeah.
And that was with National Geographic Explorer. It was a cruise for like sort of kind of research, sort of kind of not quite, but an exploration. And so it was quite a work to be done there. And there's no food that you can take to a ship. You're given whatever they make.
Is there? Yeah.
Right. And also in other countries, I had to travel 2 days to get all the way down to just the base of Argentina, and then 2 days of ship to get to Antarctica. So we're talking about it's a long trip, so you can't actually take any food with you. And so I had to eat what I was given. And of course, on ship, seed oil, they don't use animal fats. They follow the dietary guidelines. So I had a lot of, flour and other kind of things I haven't had for 10 years. And so part of my illness that is long lasting is because of all these things, all this junk that I had to eat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it sort of kind of ruined my taste again. Because for the past 10 years, I've been eating, very healthy. And now when I came back, I sort of kind of got ruined by this, and my obedience got ruined. Let's put it that way. So I have to reset the obedience. So I'm giving myself a little time. So currently, my food is like steak is my absolute favorite. Burger, beef. I eat beef day and night. If somebody was making it for me, I would eat that breakfast, lunch, dinner. Actually, lunch and dinner, because I don't eat breakfast. I just eat twice a day.
Nice.
But I eat a lot of meat. I don't have a meal without a ton of meat or a ton of protein. So I may have smaller amount of meat, but then I will have a protein. I make what is called basically a carnivore bread, and I make it with milk protein, which is a combination of whey protein powder and casein protein powder, and use either ricotta cheese or farmer's cheese or cottage cheese or cream cheese in there and bake it. And it actually looks like real bread. It's really fascinating, but it's very high in protein. I make it in a muffin shape, and a single muffin, which is usually about 100 grams, is equivalent in protein to a slice of steak. So just eating that, I eat enough protein to start synthesis, which would be about 30 grams of protein.
Yeah.
And then I pile on a lot of cheese and a lot of, whatever, pepperoni or burger or whatever I want to have on it. And so that would be my typical first meal, followed by some fruits, which I created a dip, which is protein powder. That's whey protein powder mixed with, I grind up a chocolate, an unsweetened baking chocolate, grind it up, I mix it in, and I use allulose as a sweetener, which in the US is now readily available. It's a fantastic replacement of sugar, 0 calorie, and it has some health benefits. And I will dip each bite of food. So I'm adding an additional 20 grams of protein from the protein powder eating with fruit. So that would be my first meal. And my second meal is usually either a steak or chicken or something like this, but it's always high in, skin of the chicken. And I will eat off my husband's as well because he doesn't care for it. But I will eat, or we have like blood sausage, lots of beef, pork. But I don't buy pork locally. I actually buy online from a company that sells Iberico or Iberico, depending on where you get it from, which is a Spanish pork where the pigs are fed acorn and maybe chestnuts, depending upon what they eat. And so their meat is extremely fat heavy. It's nothing like what I can in the US. Pigs are medicated to be thin. And so I don't eat that pig. I don't eat that pork. I'm sorry. That's just not. And so the Iberico pork is much more fat than meat. And absolutely adore that pork. That is really fantastic in every which way. And of course, eat a lot of fish, at least usually once a week. We have some high fat fish and seafood, otherwise like shellfish and oysters and snails. I mean, I like these unusual things, and fish roe. I am absolutely crazy about fish roe and sashimi, raw fish. And
nice.
Eggs. I eat eggs every day. This carnivore bread is also a lot of eggs, so it is very rich in protein. And so I'm basically very much a carnivore-ish with some fruits, and now I'm adding corn, some vegetable. There's just the corn. I don't eat other vegetables, and I'm going to stop it over time. But I normally don't eat any vegetables just eat some fruits, which is like just the berries kind of fruits. And
No,
I discovered that
that's good.
dragon fruit. Dragon fruit is actually very low carb. I didn't realize that.
I've seen it on videos and stuff. I've never actually seen it in real life.
I've never
Is it
seen it
good? Is it tasty?
in the US. Yeah, I can get it in the US in the different colors and shape, and it's low carb. I can eat an entire dragon fruit, which is about, it can be pretty big, but of course it's
Mm,
a very thick skin, which you can't eat just inside. It's full of seeds. I love the crunch of the seeds. It's really fantastic. And it's very low carb. So I think it's like 6 to 10 net carb grams
mm,
on of it. And it's fantastic. And I don't eat the whole fruit at once.
yeah.
And the other one would be the passion fruit, very, very sour. And
That's granadilla passion fruit.
mm,
I think
no,
that's
that
what
would be
we
the
call
granite. No,
granadilla growing up.
pomegranate. That's a pomegranate, I think.
No, no, pomegranate's a different thing.
No, it's a fruit. It comes with the name is after the flower, which
Mm,
looks very much like a passion as is envisioned. But the fruit itself is like a brown or orange, sort of kind of egg shaped thing, an egg size.
pops up and it's like yellowish on the inside with lots of little
Liquid or greenish
seeds.
liquid,
Yeah.
and there's lots of seeds in it, and
Mm,
it's extremely sour.
yeah.
Um, it's very, very good, and so that too is very low carbohydrate. So these are
Mm,
some fruits that I will add, but it's a lot of meat. I live off of meat. I weight lift, and so yeah, I've got
nice.
some muscles there now. I just
So
restarted
that
a month ago.
you mentioned that you're 71, but you don't, I mean, you don't look a day over 48, 46, 48.
Well,
Like
thank you. No,
you must be doing something right.
well, a lot of people tell me, even who see me in person. I mean, obviously these lights reduce some of the facial variations, but I don't have too many wrinkles. I've been blessed with good skin. I
Mm,
guess being blessed means that you eat well. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, no, it's evident that you look after
right.
yourself. And I think that's important.
Very, very strong. I created a Facebook post, and it's really funny because I went to Costco to buy cases of bottled water, and a case is about 50 pounds total, which is what,
Okay.
about
Yeah.
35 kilos or something like that. And
Somewhere there. Yeah.
yeah, and so I do it myself. I go without my husband because I want to do it. I mean, it's a good physical workout. You lift it,
Mm,
put it in the shopping cart, lift it again, put it in. I mean, you're lifting basically 50 pounds. It's like going to the gym, right? That's a
yeah.
lightweight because I lift heavier than that. And so I was in the parking lot and I was just about to throw one of these. I pick them up and throw basically because
Mm,
you have to
mm,
throw it on top of the other one. And this guy saw me coming, and I am 71 years old. I mean, I don't look 71, but I am a little old lady, basically. And so this guy wanted to help and started to say, well, you need, and then I asked, and he said, oh, maybe you don't need any help. So yeah,
oh, that's brilliant.
I think, and I do a lot of squats, and I don't mean the weightlifting squats. I mean the full squats. I want to have the
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
squats. I want to be able to get up from the floor if
Yeah.
I fall, and I do like 50 of them. And so, yeah, I do keep in a better shape, in a good shape, I hope. Then that sort of kind of denies my age,
No, but
sort of.
that's amazingly important because if you look at the average 71-year-old, you're looking at people who are on the brink of frailty, right? Facing cognitive decline, and
Right,
they've usually stopped working and they've settled into a very limiting routine, and they're just starting to shut
right,
off. And you're the exact opposite of that. You're
right. Funny.
active, physically active, you're academically active, you're switched on, you're very busy, you keep like you're obviously doing things very different to what the average person your age would be doing, but I think the results stand for themselves. And I think
They do,
more people need to pay attention to your approach to things and maybe try it.
but it requires commitment
Mm,
and endurance. And so, and of course, there's also happy genetics. So, for example, I'm looking at one of my neighbors who is a couple of years older than I am. She's very fit, and she's a redhead. She's coming from probably an Irish background, and she's very fit, eating what she does, which is a lot of Italian pasta and whatever. It's fine. So there are some genetics involved as well.
mm,
And for my genes, for who I am, the way I eat is better than
mm,
the way I used to eat, which would have been following the American dietary advice.
yeah.
And know that I actually do better adding a little bit of fruits in there.
Mhm.
than without. I went on carnivore for 8 months when I got the first COVID in 2020, because I'm quite aware that COVID is a metabolic disease. And so I wanted to make sure that I do the best I can, particularly since I caught the Wuhan strain, the first strain. And so I wanted to make sure that I come out of that alive as well as I could. And I did really good. But once I recovered, I cut it actually twice really shortly after that. And then I cut it 3 more times. It was just absolutely ridiculous. But I'm obviously very sensitized to these kind of viruses. I catch all of them, but I recover really quickly, so that's okay.
That's good.
But so I did go carnivore for 8 months, and I did good. I lost a lot of weight. I was thinner than I am now, but I don't care about if I'm a little bit overweight as long as I'm healthier and I feel my best, and I feel better now than I did then.
Yeah,
And so
I think that's an important point. Body composition is one indicator of health. It's not the be all and end all of health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other indicator I think is that when I go to the gym now, I now have a private trainer. So I just go to his garage, basically. I don't go into a gym. And so all of his eyes are on me, just me. And I am the only one who's working and working hard for 1 hour. And when I come out of the gym or this training session, I'm actually energized. I'm ready to do more rather than go home and collapse and be tired, which is what I would have been after just being a carnivore. So my body structure, and I'm a little bit overweight now. I don't care. I'm totally fine with that. And I'm definitely not the little very thin ladies. I have a lot of muscles on me, and I have a little extra fat, and I'm fine with that, because the first thing that I do if I catch another COVID or whatever else I catch, I don't care, is I start fasting.
Yes.
And so I fasted through all my COVIDs, 5 days usually. And for that, I need to have a little extra because I'm too old to waste muscles and fat. So I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with extra, and I'm very healthy and I sleep amazingly good. I mean, the lifestyle change of what you eat is just so. I just made a post about my fingers. So I used to have really bad arthritis in all my fingers and hands. It was one of those where your shape of your fingers started to sort of change.
Yeah.
And so you can see here, I still have a little bit.
You can see a little like a lump on the side there. Yeah.
Right. And so, but this finger was like that too. So, but look at the two in differing now. Okay. So yesterday I was playing with my ring. This is an Aura ring that looks at my vital signs and activity and other things. And I like to spin it when I have a chit chat with a hubby, and I would chit chat and spin and play. And I was chit chatting, and pew, it went down to the base of this middle finger. And I stopped. I said, wow.
Hey everyone. I hope that you are enjoying the discussion so far. I apologize for interrupting the episode, but I just want to take a moment to talk to you about the work that I do with Zinzino. Zinzino are a brilliant Scandinavian biotech and life sciences firm. Their concept of test-based personalized nutrition is absolutely revolutionary, and they are the pioneers of test-based personalized nutrition. I use their products and solutions myself and my family. In fact, we use multiple of their products. And Zinzino has been instrumental in helping me identify that I was omega-3 deficient, horrendously so, and to get my omega-3 deficiency resolved. You see, their at-home tests give you the data and insights needed to inform your dietary strategy to see whether you have any key essential nutrient deficiencies or imbalances that need addressing. And where you do, they have targeted supplementation stacks that are personalized to you according to your age, sex, and body weight, which means they are most effective to get you back to optimal. This isn't about just avoiding deficiency. This is about getting you back to optimal, and that's a complete and utter game changer. So if you would like to know more, I have linked a short survey in the episode description. Complete the survey. It asks you some simple questions about your health goals and desires. It takes less than a minute to complete. And what I'll give you off the back of that is a personalized product recommendation out of Zinzino's solution catalog, telling you which I think best suit your desires and needs and why.
I'll then also personally reach out to you to see if there's any questions or queries that I can answer. Let me take the guesswork out of your health journey.
Yeah,
My
didn't
bones
expect
healed.
that to fit.
It
Yeah.
didn't expect it at all. I have not been able to put a ring on that finger for over 20 years.
Wow.
And it just sunk in there. I said, oh my God, it is totally here. There you go. I just put it
Amazing.
on. Yeah, and I wasn't able to do that up until now. It's just really amazing that I can do that. So,
And have you noticed increased function and less pain as the changes happen?
I don't
Nice.
have any pain. And that's why it's very difficult to notice the changes, because what doesn't hurt anymore, you don't notice.
Yes. It's sort of out of
Okay.
sight, out
And
of
so
mind.
it
Yeah.
just suddenly, wow, it totally changed suddenly. So it's really
Nice.
amazing that even so many years after the fact, even if I added not corn, I still am healing.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Dr. Stanton, we could carry on for hours, I'm sure. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for your insights and for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating and a really good discussion. The one thing I like to ask my guests as we end off each episode is if there was one takeaway that you would like to resonate with the guests and for them to really hold on to after this episode, what would that be for you?
I think that the most important thing, based on my experiences, is that the best things in life usually take a little effort to do. And it's not easy, but once you're there, boy, does it look easy.
Yeah, nice. That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure that
Thank you for inviting me.
I'd love to have you on again at some point in the future,
Sure.
but enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you. And you too. And it was really lovely talking to you. And I hope I didn't just talk into thin air a lot. No? Okay,
That is
good.
it's been absolutely brilliant, and I think the audience is going to love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.